Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking to my friend Lou Diamond. Lou, it's great to connect with you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about your book, Speakeasy, Connect with Every Conversation. You're a professional speaker. You're a podcaster, Thrive Loud. You've been on my show a bunch of times. I've been on your show a bunch of times. I think I want to go back and say that Doug Sandler connected us initially.
We're not going to give him the satisfaction of that type of credit, John. But yes, it's possible he may have connected the two.
Yeah. He's great. I haven't talked to him in a bit. I need to follow up with him. But we're not here to talk about Doug. We're here to talk about you. So, I always love a good book. It is amazing to me, and I've always felt this way. I really didn't start reading till really, I would say right when college started. And I always found it amazing that for $9.95 or $14.95 or $12.95, but under $20, you could buy something, a masterpiece that someone spent a lifetime of knowledge putting together, and you could then just accelerate your growth. And so I always love talking to people about their books and authors. And here we're talking about Speakeasy, Connect with Every Conversation. And my first question is really this. Connecting with people is very different than just talking to people.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's dive in a little bit. And I love I'm calling it a tagline, but, talk about what connection means in specifically a post-COVID world.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's applicable to before, during, and after. I believe, John, that every connection in our lives begins with a good conversation. But we all know that we don't necessarily always have a good conversation. Like to your point, we meet people and we don't connect. The conversation might be fleeting. We don't take the time to really want to make the connection. And there's a couple of things, and I think COVID brought about something really important. Conversations are essential. When you drill down, if every connection begins with a good conversation, well, then that's where we should really be focused on. All the connections in our lives that we have personally, professionally, need to have a good starting point. And when they don't connect, it made me think, well, what if they did?
Yeah.
What if every single time we had a conversation with someone, a connection was made, an opportunity was created, and a relationship began where more conversations would take place? Business would get done, sales would get done. People would meet and establish personal relationships. And I realized you and I are in a great spot in our lives because I learned a lot of lessons sitting behind the microphone.
Yeah.
Because you and I have been having lots of conversations. And there is something to be said about great conversations that we have. You know that you have them. You make connections with just about every single one of the guests you have on your program, because there are things that you do in the conversation, and that's important. What I learned in putting together Speakeasy was it wasn't as much about the things you needed to do as how you needed to be.
Yeah. So
stepping into every conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Think Community. Many of you know I'm a business coach, and I work with successful people who are stuck, and I get them unstuck. And what I love about this show is that I have guests that give the listener a minimum of one thing to help them get unstuck. And so I want to kind of give some tools to get them unstuck. And so and I find in my coaching career and sitting behind the mic that when you can define something, when you can give people a word, when you can give people a talking point, when you give people a question, when you can give people a transition or a bridge, it kind of like it's really it can be life-changing.
Yeah.
And so what in your book, how does it guide someone and provide any kind of immediate tools that they can implement to speak easier?
I'm going to give one quick tip that I do before I step on any stage, before I enter any client meeting, before I give any virtual presentation, before I go into a podcast interview, whether as a host or a guest. It is a routine that I do that is a great way to think about how you can better connect in the conversation you're about to have.
Yeah.
And I call it Connect Your Voice, VOICE. Each one of these letters has a specific task that I do before I step in, almost like a meditative thing right before I start a conversation. V, visualize how the conversation should go. Here is a perfect opportunity. You're someone I know. We're reconnecting. I'm
Yeah.
informing you. I'm educating your audience. I want to create an environment that in this conversation, I'm going to provide you with, as who's asking me the questions, you're the question asker. I'm going to provide you with information that your listeners are going to benefit from.
Yeah.
O is to appreciate the opportunity to even have a conversation. John, every conversation is a gift.
Yeah.
We need to think of it that way. And if you go into every conversation being appreciative of it, the person you're about to speak with, one, will be real appreciative in the moment because you're being appreciative of them. It's creating a more positive environment to have a better opportunity to connect in the conversation.
Yeah.
I is the identity you need to have in the conversation. As I mentioned, you're asking the questions, I'm providing the information. You need to know it, almost like a role in a show or an improv play. Because if you have a clear understanding of who you are, that's going to be clear with the person you're trying to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And lastly, C and E is you need to bring charisma and energy. Charisma, you have to bring something unique about yourself. I have a lot of energy. I'm kind of fun. I like to make fun of your brother and you whenever I can. But most notably for these listeners, I'm always trying to bring that charisma of who I am individually.
Yeah.
And E is an energy, because let's make it clear, to make a connection in a conversation, you need to raise the bar a little bit, because nobody wants to connect with a dud.
Yeah. 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 I love that. You got to kind of, it's interesting that I love the voice flow of that. And as you said, it's meditative. I find myself meditating before all my meetings, all my podcasts. And sometimes it's just 30 seconds, but I can, because I've been doing it for so many years, I can kind of get into a zone of where I need to kind of be.
I think it's a focus point for me. And when I've helped other people and when I've spoken to audiences or to companies to help them, or really salespeople and marketers, when they're in a conversation and that conversation is about trying to get a prospect to become a client.
Yeah.
Think about that level of focus and understand where your role is. And the more focused you are and the more appreciative you are, even that time to have the conversation, you're going to, that level of respect and being yourself and bringing a little energy is going to make that conversation in and of itself memorable.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do, because we want to walk away saying, I want to have another conversation with that person.
Yeah.
And that is a helpful tip that there are many suggestions in Speakeasy about this. Again, this is how you need to be. And if that's a set reminder to get your clock going as part of like your stage prep, if you would, before you're entering the art of the conversation itself.
Yeah, I love it. Let's continue the conversation about the art of the conversation, and how you address the idea of influencing people and empowering people. I think those are two huge skill sets when it comes to the art of the conversation. And so, kind of break each of those down.
One of the big parts I'll say is in the conversation itself. This was taken from someone that you and I looked up to a long time ago, the late Larry King.
Love him.
When the red light went on, he basically flipped a switch and he was ready to go. He was basically, as I love to say, he was in the moment and he was going to show up every time he was in a conversation. And I can state this, that it is important for people to understand that at that moment of a conversation, when you're not showing up and you're not being the best version of yourself, or you're not trying to make that engagement, the level of what you're going to be talked about fades. Yeah. So there's a level of focus and understanding and trying to be in the moment in that short period of time in a conversation, because most of our conversations aren't that long.
Yeah.
The last point that relates to what you're saying too is in the sense of appreciating that time is a limited commodity that we have. I sign off each of my shows, John, be brief, be bright, be gone.
Yeah.
That's B5G, if you want to count all the B's in there. B5G is my motto, because be brief means try not to be so wordy in your conversations when you're in them. Try and say something that is bright and going to elevate and add to the conversation and not distract from it. And be gone doesn't mean drop the mic. Be gone kind of means move onward and upward. And when you do that, John, if you think of that as your center of what you're trying to do in a conversation, you're going to make the conversation itself a piece of artwork on its own. And that's a key piece of this.
I love that. You mentioned, conversations aren't necessarily that long. How long is a quality conversation?
Phenomenal. It could be literally just a back and forth in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Or it could be a meaningful one. I'll never forget. I've spent a full day with my late grandmother years ago. And I think we had, supposed to be like a 20-minute dinner at probably like 3:30, but it turned into something that was about 2 hours. And those are moments, and every single aspect of that conversation was valuable. But I've also hopped into a cab with somebody and connected with someone immediately in almost like under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And remembering that, wow, that was someone I got to follow up with and connect with. You can have that connection. There isn't a time limit.
Yeah.
A lot of it is if you show up the right way every time you enter those conversations, you might increase the likelihood that the speed of the conversation connects faster.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Let's kind of rewind for a minute, and you talked a little bit about, what empowered you and motivated you to write the book. But a question I get, I wrote a book a few years ago, is what was the process like of writing the book? And I think, everybody kind of wants to, most everybody that I talk to, I have a book in me, I want to write a book. Just talk a minute about the process of writing it, because I think it's something that people are always so intrigued by.
My first book I wrote close to 7 years ago, called Master the Art of Connecting. When I finished that book, John, I made 2 promises to myself. One, I was not going to write another book until I really had something to say.
Yeah.
Not for just the sake of writing it. And the other part was that I was going to put in something that was impactful, that I knew would not only help people and the folks that I've worked with in the past, or other people that pick this up. I wanted it to be something that was evergreen and that would always be a valuable tool that you can pull out to any time, a resource, if you would, a guidebook. And that was a big component to writing it. It was not easy. I went down a direction, believe it or not, before I started writing Speakeasy. I geared onto one aspect of the conversation, which was listening.
Yeah.
I even flew to Oregon and interviewed an audio technology company to understand the hearing impaired, what they try to provide for listening. And I did a tremendous amount of research with it. And 2 things came out of that. One, I wasn't the right person to tell that story. And 2, it reminded me how important and how valuable conversations are. And then that is something that I'm very positioned in the right spot to speak about. Yeah. And I then took a lot of time and focus. It probably took about a year and change. Worked with an amazing team over at Page 2, loved them, and in putting it together, and a lot of writing, a lot of editing, a lot of soul searching, but more importantly, a lot of valuable lessons incorporated in a real compact, easy message that everybody can value.
I love it. I love it. What is one of the number one things someone will get from reading your book, extract from it?
They're going to start to think of conversations a lot differently. Everyone, you and I are having one right now, and this is a typical one. But there are many other forms of conversations that we engage with numerous times of the day, and we actually don't think of them as conversations. Yeah. And the book will actually highlight how you should be thinking about that conversation and how to deploy the lessons of Speakeasy in all those aspects. And it will increase how you can connect, engage, and win. Each chapter I give you is a specific lesson of how you can take the tip and tool that you have and apply it specifically to business, but it could be utilized for leadership, for marketing, for sales, in a way that you can grow as an individual and a leader. Yeah. And that's something that I want to have. So every chapter has connect, engage, and win. That'll be the biggest takeaway you'll have from each chapter. Yeah, plus, you'll love this part. There are a lot of difficult conversations we have. And because of the theme Speakeasy, like an old 100-year-old perk, at the end of the book, John, we created the Speakeasy bar cart menu, where we offer conversational flights, the ingredients of what you need to bring to the table to deal with an uncomfortable conversation, which we call the 800-pound gorilla, the boom, boom, Zoom room on how to make your Zoom meetings a little bit more energetic, and a bunch of other unique conversations that are very often things you run into, and how you can apply the lessons of Speakeasy.
I love it. I love it. All right, quick speed round. You ready?
Yeah, let's hit it.
Book that's had the biggest impact on you.
I'm going to give a shorter term version, Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones, and because he's at the top of my book. No, without the lesson, the things you should be saying in the moment. I'm more about what you need to bring to the table. Phil's spectacular at hitting the message of what you need to say in the conversation.
Yeah. All right, good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
By my father. Keep your eye on the ball and follow through.
Yeah, I love it. Finish this sentence. One thing everyone needs to do to be a better conversationalist is?
Buy this book.
Good. I like that. And one, and
is,
one,
is a,
yeah,
I'll
go
give
ahead.
one real one.
Yeah.
That everyone needs to do is to appreciate the opportunity that every conversation is a gift.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's a great takeaway. Think community. We talk. We started this conversation talking about, you know, one of the through lines and missions of this podcast is to give you at least one thing to take off the shelf to get unstuck. And Lou, you shared a lot about your book, Speak Easy, a lot of nuggets. But one thing I'm going to extract, because you just said one of the things I was also going to say is that every conversation is a gift. But one thing I'm going to extract is the responsibility that you talked about, that we have to show up the right way.
Yeah.
Because every conversation starts with, and you talked about the acronym VOICE, but we are responsible for the energy that we bring to the room and every conversation. And so, you know, VOICE ends with E. You talked about the importance of the energy. And we got to show up the right way. So whether it's conflict, whether it's happy, whether it's business, whether it's accountability, I think most everybody can use some tips on how to be a better communicator. And think community, check out on Amazon, Speak Easy by Lou Diamond. It's a great book, and I am really happy for you, Lou. You know, we've been following each other's careers for a while now, and it's great to be on each other's show, to follow your career, to listen to your work, to read your work. Congratulations on everything that you've done. Congratulations on this and the success of your book. Any last words? How can people connect with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, they can go to thriveloud.com to either check out all the things we do in my business, and you can find the Thrive Loud podcast, which John's been a guest on. And you also can get a link directly to Speak Easy, or you can go to speakeasybook.com.
I love it. All right. Think community. If Lou can help you or the book, check it out. If I can help you, check out johndwoskin.com. Have an amazing day, everybody. Lou, thanks, man. This was great.
Great to be here.